All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on something, well, absolutely fundamental to the global game, but maybe something most fans don't really think about much. We're diving into the, let's say, vast, intricate, and sometimes pretty surprising rule book that governs football off the pitch.
That's right. And we've got quite the stack of official documents here. Everything from the core FIFA statutes, key regulations on player transfers, discipline, agents.
All that stuff.
Yeah, all the way down to specific circulars, toolkits like the important one on child safeguarding, and even some real-world case decisions. They really show these rules in action.
So our mission today really is to try and cut through some of that legal jargon.
Yeah.
We want to pull out the most important knowledge for you, help understand the basic framework that keeps the world's most popular sport actually running behind the scenes.
Think of it as your guide to the rules off the pitch.
Exactly. The rules that make everything possible, from a World Cup draw right down to a complex player transfer.
Okay, so where do we start unpacking this? I think maybe at the very top. We need to understand the power structure first, right? The foundation.
Yeah, good point. Where does that ultimate authority actually sit within FIFA's world?
Well, according to the FIFA statutes, the top body, the supreme body, is the Congress.
Right.
Think of it like FIFA's parliament. It's made up of reps from all the member associations.
Okay.
And that's where the really big decisions get made, electing the president, the council, and crucially, they're the only ones who can change the core rule book, the statutes themselves.
So that's significant power. Mostly simple majority needed.
For most things, yeah, but amending the statutes takes more. Shows how fundamental they are.
Okay, so Congress is the big legislative body. What about the council then? They seem more like the executive arm.
Exactly right. The council is the main decision-making body when Congress isn't meeting. They issue a lot of the critical regulations we see day to day. Things like the FIFA disciplinary code, the code of ethics, the rules for the football tribunal. We'll definitely get into those later. And the president can also call urgent meetings of the Bureau of the Council for, immediate decisions, though they need checking later.
So you've got these global bodies setting the rules. But football happens on the ground, right?
Yeah.
How do these rules filter down through the member associations and confederations?
The member associations, your national FAs, they're absolutely key. The statutes put really significant obligations on them.
Such as?
Well, first off, they must comply fully with all FIFA rules and decisions. That includes decisions from the Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS, when they come via FIFA.
Okay.
They're also responsible for making sure football is played according to the laws of the game in their country. And here's an interesting point.
Yeah.
It's actually the IFAB, the International Football Association Board, that sets and changes the laws of the game, the rules on the pitch, not FIFA itself.
That's a good distinction. What else do the MAs have to do?
They have to regulate players and transfers within their own territory, protect the integrity of their competitions. So think anti-match fixing efforts.
Right.
And critically, make sure their own decision-making bodies avoid conflicts of interest. The statutes even mention that their legislative bodies should follow principles of representative democracy and, importantly, consider gender equality.
And the confederations. Our sources mentioned CONCACAF and OFC.
Yeah, confederations are recognized by FIFA. There's this principle of mutual respect for their authority in their regions. The sources do note a rare possibility, an association joining a confederation outside its geography. But even then, FIFA needs authorization and must get the opinion of the confederation that is geographically relevant first. Shows how that structure usually holds.
Okay, let's pivot a bit. Let's talk players. Their status, eligibility, that's fundamental.
Oh, absolutely huge area. The FIFA Council is specifically tasked with regulating player status, transfers, encouraging training by clubs, protecting national teams.
Like making sure clubs release players for internationals.
Exactly. And the rules around eligibility for national teams, especially if a player acquires new nationality, are quite detailed.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen debates about that. How does it work if a player gets a new passport?
Okay, so if a player gets a new nationality and hasn't played senior international football for their old country, they generally need to meet residency rules to play for the new one.
How long?
The regulations governing the application of the statutes spell it out. It can be 2 years, up to 5 years, depending on when they arrived in the country.
Ah, okay.
And there's even a specific rule for stateless individuals. If someone holds no nationality and local law prevents them getting one, they might still be eligible if they've lived there for at least 5 years.
Wow, okay. So that covers Structure, basic rules, player eligibility,
Mhm.
but rules need teeth, right? Enforcement. How does FIFA make sure people follow them and handle breaches?
This brings us to the judicial system. Its whole purpose is exactly that: ensure compliance, handle violations.
And there are different bodies involved here, not just one court.
Correct. A few key ones. First, there's the Ethics Committee,
Right.
governed by the Code of Ethics, which the Council issues. It's split into two parts: an investigatory chamber to look into things, and an adjudicatory chamber to make decisions.
And they handle what kind of breaches?
Ethical stuff, mainly. Sanctioning officials, players, agents for things like bribery, corruption, conflicts of interest.
Okay, so ethics handles the ethics. What about more general rule breaking? Like, say, a club not releasing a player or issues during a match.
That's more likely to fall under the disciplinary committee. They operate under the FIFA Disciplinary Code, the FDC.
Okay.
The FDC lists tons of offenses and potential sanctions. They can hit member associations, clubs, officials, players, agents, pretty much anyone involved.
And they can act quickly if needed.
Yeah, for urgent stuff or protests about matches, a single judge from the committee can step in.
Is there an appeal route within FIFA?
Yes, there's an appeal committee. If you get a decision from, say, the disciplinary committee and you disagree, that's usually your next stop internally.
And the football tribunal. That source is called a central body. What does it do?
It is central, yeah, and relatively new in its current structure. It's the main place for football-specific disputes and regulatory applications.
Like what?
It has three chambers: dispute resolution, player status, and the agent's chamber. So disputes over contracts, training compensation, agent fees, that kind of stuff often lands there. And they have sanctioning powers too. The council sets their specific procedural rules.
Okay, so you've got ethics, disciplinary, appeal, the tribunal. What if someone goes through all that and still thinks FIFA got it wrong? Is there anywhere else to go?
Yes, and this is crucial. The Court of Arbitration for Sport, CAS.
Ah, CAS. Heard of them. Based in Switzerland.
That's the one in Lausanne. FIFA recognizes CAS as the place to resolve disputes between FIFA and stakeholders, federations, clubs, players, officials, agents, you name it.
So you have to go through FIFA's internal process first, and then you can appeal to CAS.
Exactly. That's the absolute key.
Right.
You must exhaust the internal FIFA channels. If you do that, you can take your case to CAS, but there's a strict deadline, just 21 days after you get the final grounded decision from FIFA.
And what rules does CAS apply?
Primarily FIFA's own regulations. But because it's in Switzerland, Swiss law can also play a role, especially on procedural things. Think of CAS as the sort of supreme court for sport, independent of FIFA.
Right. So let's talk about the sanctions. What can these bodies actually do? Starting with individuals, players, officials, agents.
Okay, for natural persons, sanctions can range quite a bit. Suspensions from matches or for a period of time. Bans from specific areas like dressing rooms or the technical area. More seriously, a ban from any football-related activity, that's a big one. Community service related to football, or specifically for agents, suspension or even withdrawal of their license.
And for clubs or associations.
Yeah.
The legal persons.
Different set of tools there. Things like a ban on registering new players, the transfer ban you hear about.
Yeah.
Being forced to play matches behind closed doors or on neutral ground. Maybe having a match result annulled.
Can it get worse?
Oh, yes. Points deductions, relegation to a lower division, expulsion from competitions, or having to forfeit matches. That's where the real pain can be for a club.
The FTC also mentions specific offenses. Duty to collaborate sounds important.
It really is. It's fundamental to any investigation. Everyone involved parties, witnesses must cooperate fully and in good faith with FIFA's bodies and administration. Meaning provide information, documents, evidence when asked, truthfully and promptly. And interestingly, the FDC also warns that making unfounded or irresponsible accusations against someone can itself lead to sanctions.
What about behavior in public? Inciting hatred or violence?
Taken very seriously. Any public incitement like that by a player or official carries a minimum ban of 6 months from football, plus a minimum fine of 5,000 Swiss francs.
Okay.
And that minimum fine jumps significantly to at least 20,000 Swiss francs in serious cases. The rules specifically mention if it happens via social media, mass media, or near a stadium on match day. So, yes, online comments can have very real consequences.
That 20,000 minimum for serious social media stuff is notable. What if a federation doesn't enforce a financial decision against one of its own clubs?
They have a clear duty to do that. If FIFA or CAS makes a financial award against a club or individual, the relevant member association must ensure it's enforced.
And if they don't?
They can be fined by FIFA. If they persistently fail, FIFA might take additional measures against the association itself. And the disciplinary committee is explicitly empowered to enforce settlement agreements reached in previous disciplinary cases, too.
Does being a repeat offender make things worse? Recidivism.
Yes, definitely. The FDC lists recidivism as an aggravating circumstance. The disciplinary body has to consider it when setting the sanction, usually meaning a harsher penalty. The only carve-out is for doping, which has its own separate regulations.
Can we expect on some process details? Confidentiality, for instance.
Sure. Members of the judicial bodies are bound by strict confidentiality regarding the facts, their discussions, the decisions.
And the parties involved.
Yeah. Them too. They have a duty to keep things confidential, unless FIFA specifically says otherwise. Breaching that confidentiality, that can be sanctioned. FIFA can publish decisions, but they might anonymize or redact parts if needed.
Who pays for all this?
Yeah.
The costs of proceedings.
Generally, the sanctioned party bears the costs. For disciplinary committee cases specifically, FIFA often covers its own costs. Unless it's a protest case, then the loser pays.
Okay.
And importantly, if a party's bad behavior, like causing delays or making frivolous arguments, racks up unnecessary costs, they can be ordered to pay those costs regardless of the final outcome.
How does FIFA actually communicate decisions? Email, post.
The main way now is the FIFA legal portal. Notifications usually go to the relevant association or club, and they are then responsible for informing the individual involved.
And decisions take effect immediately?
Yes, upon notification. Often you get the operative part first, just the main decision and sanction. If no costs are ordered, you have 10 days to ask for the full written reasons, the grounds. If you don't, the decision is final. If costs are ordered or it's a sporting sanction with immediate effect, you usually get the grounds too. And that 21-day clock for appealing to CAS, it starts ticking from when you get the notification of the grounds.
Okay, shifting towards the pitch now. How do yellow cards add up in a tournament?
Standard rule in FIFA competitions. 2 yellows in 2 different matches means an automatic 1-match suspension for the next game in that same competition.
And if a player is suspended, what exactly can't they do on match day?
Oh, the rules are quite specific. No entry to the dressing room, the tunnel, or the technical area before or during the match.
Right.
Can't be involved in the warm-up, can't sit on the bench.
Can they watch from the stands?
Yes, they can sit in the stands, provided security is okay with it, but they can only go back into the dressing room after the final whistle. And interestingly, no post-match press conferences for them.
There's also a slightly odd rule about ineligible players, isn't there? If a team forfeits a match because they fielded one.
Yeah, it seems a bit counterintuitive. If a match is forfeited later because an ineligible player played, the suspension that player got for being ineligible is considered served by that forfeited match. They don't get banned for an extra game on top of the forfeit.
Okay. And clubs and associations are on the hook for fan behavior too.
Absolutely. Big responsibility. They have to ensure a law and order in and around the stadium and, crucially, guarantee the safety of officials and the visiting team.
Fines if they fail.
Definitely. Minimum CHF 5,000 for safety failures, minimum CHF 10,000 for failing to maintain order.
What about specific things like pitch invasions or throwing stuff?
Yep, specific tariffs, pitch invasions, fines are tiered by the number of people. Starts at CHF 5,000 for just a few, goes up to CHF 20,000 or more if it's over 20 people.
Throwing objects.
Fined per object. First time, it's CHF 500 per item thrown. Lighting fireworks or flares. Also fined per item, like CHF 500 each, plus a minimum CHF 1,000 fine first time around.
And it gets worse for repeat offenses.
Significantly worse. The fines escalate quickly. It shows they're trying to clamp down hard on that kind of disruption.
Okay, that paints a pretty clear picture of the disciplinary side. Let's move into maybe the most complex area, the one that generates so many headlines. Player transfers.
Ah, yes. The regulations on the status and transfer of players, the RSTP. These are the bedrock rules for how players move between clubs and get registered.
And you can't just transfer a player anytime, right? Transfer windows.
Correct. There are fixed registration periods for professionals, but the rules have evolved. There are specific exceptions now.
Like what?
For female players, there are provisions allowing registration outside a window if they're returning from family leave, adoption, maternity leave, or recovery related to pregnancy.
That's significant.
It is. There were also COVID-related exceptions for a while. Amateurs, though, they have different rules set by their own national associations.
And international transfers need that special system, TMS.
The transfer matching system, yes. Mandatory online platform for all international transfers, now professional and amateur.
Wow, amateurs too.
Yes. Clubs and associations get free access. They have clear obligations. Upload accurate documents, usually PDFs, within 14 days. Make sure they're authentic. Provide all the details. It's FIFA's main tool for monitoring international moves.
What about the ITC, the International Transfer Certificate? Is that linked to TMS?
It is. The ITC is generated via TMS. It's the official clearance needed for an international transfer. Once the new clubs association requests it, the old association has 72 hours to respond in TMS.
And if they just don't respond?
Then the new association can provisionally register the player anyway. And here's a crucial point the rules make.
Yeah.
FIFA cannot block an ITC just because there's some ongoing contract dispute between the player and the old club. That dispute has to be handled separately, usually by the football tribunal. The transfer itself can proceed.
Okay, let's talk contracts. When can a player or club terminate a contract with what FIFA calls just cause?
Specific situations are laid out. A key example for a player is if the club unlawfully fails to pay at least 2 monthly salaries on time.
Can the player just walk out then?
No, there's a process. The player has to give the club written notice first, detailing the default, and give him a deadline at least 15 days to pay up. If the club still doesn't pay, then the player might have just cause. Abusive conduct by either party can also be just cause for the other to terminate.
What's this protected period I've read about? Sounds like it prevents early walkouts.
That's exactly the idea. It's a period at the beginning of a contract, usually the first couple of years. If a player or club unilaterally terminates the contract without just cause during this period, there are sporting sanctions on top of any compensation owed.
What kind of sanctions for a player?
A ban from playing in official matches for 4 months. It can even be 6 months if there are aggravating circumstances.
Ouch.
Yeah. Though the ban gets suspended between seasons unless they're playing in a big final international tournament. It's FIFA trying to enforce contract stability, especially for longer deals.
Third-party ownership or influence. There used to be a really gray area, didn't it? What are the rules now?
Much stricter. It's explicitly prohibited. Clubs cannot sign contracts with anyone, another club, or a third party that would let that third party influence the club's independence or decisions on employment or transfers.
And for agents?
They're caught too. Under the new agent regs, they can't have an interest. And that's defined really broadly in entities owning player registration rights or generally in clubs or academies. Interest covers ownership, financial stakes, any kind of material influence, admin, managerial. Very wide definition.
Protection of minors seems like a huge focus, too.
Absolutely critical. Players under 18 have very strong protections. International transfers for minors, highly restricted, only allowed in a few specific narrow exceptions.
Right.
Like if the player's parents move to the new country for reasons totally unrelated to football, or transfers within the UEA for 16, 18-year-olds, or certain limited student exchange programs for amateurs.
And MAs have duties here, too.
Yes, ensuring academies report minors, keeping registers, reporting any wrongdoing they find involving minors. There are also rules about eligibility for unregistered non-national minors, usually needing 5 years residency proof.
Can clubs bring players in just for a trial?
Yes, for a defined period. If the player is a pro, they need written permission from their current club first.
Is that regulated?
It is now. There's a FIFA trial form that has to be agreed, signed by everyone, and lodged in TMS at least 10 days before the trial even starts. Another layer of oversight.
And the FIFA clearinghouse, what's its role in all this?
That's a newer initiative, primarily focused on payments. It processes specific transfer-related payments, especially training compensation and solidarity payments.
Money owed to clubs that developed a player.
Exactly. The idea is to boost transparency and make sure that money meant to reward youth development actually gets to the clubs that earned it. The new club pays the clearinghouse, they check everything's compliant, then distribute the funds.
It really sounds like this whole system is constantly being tweaked, adapted. Our sources mentioned recent examples.
They did. It's definitely not static. It has to react to global events and changing norms. Like, there's an interim framework via circulars for players and coaches affected by the war in Ukraine.
What does that involve?
Things like allowing contract suspensions, exceptions to normal registration rules, letting players register for more clubs in a season than usual, practical adjustments.
And there were also significant changes mentioned regarding female players and coaches. Circular 1889.
Yes, really important amendments there, trying to better reflect the realities of women's football.
How so?
They extended rights and protections, recognizing adoptive parents, non-biological mothers, and crucially, introduced specific rights for players unable to play due to severe menstruation or medical issues linked to pregnancy. It's a clear move towards making the rules more inclusive and supportive for female athletes.
That's a really thorough look at the transfer world. Now, let's shift to the people often driving these deals, the agents. There's a whole new system for them now, right? The FFAR.
Yes, the FIFA Football Agent Regulations. A major overhaul. The headline is, anyone providing football agent services must now hold a license issued directly by FIFA.
So how do you get this license? Just apply?
Not quite. You have to meet specific eligibility criteria and pass the FIFA Football Agent Exam.
And those eligibility requirements sound pretty tough. Our sources had some case decisions that really brought this to life.
They are tough, yes, and those cases are illuminating. A really basic one, Article 5 of the FAR, is you need a clean criminal record, specifically never convicted of certain crimes.
Which ones?
The rules list examples like drug trafficking, fraud, forgery.
And the cases show FIFA enforcing that.
Absolutely. We saw one case, let's call him Agent A, provisional suspension issued. Why? He had a previous conviction for drug trafficking, Class A cocaine, got jail time. That's a direct breach. No license.
What about financial crimes, fraud, forgery?
Yep, covered too. Agent B got a provisional suspension for a conviction under Swiss law for fraud and forgery. Even though it was a suspended sentence and a fine, it still violated the FFER eligibility.
And agency evasion of duty.
Correct. Agent C also got provisionally suspended. Conviction for fraudulent evasion of duty in another country. FIFA decided that falls under the prohibited categories. In his specific case, due to a temporary hold on one FAVAR article, that provisional suspension actually stayed as the final decision for CAS appeal purposes. It just hammers home how seriously FIFA is vetting criminal records against these specific points.
Another big eligibility rule. Conflicts of interest.
Vital. Agents cannot hold a position or have an interest in a club or academy. And interest, as we touched on with TPI, is defined really broadly.
Not just owning the club.
No way. Owning shares, having a financial stake, any kind of material influence, financial, administrative, managerial. It's very wide-ranging.
Did the cases touch on this too?
Yes, Agent C again. Part of his suspension was because he was CEO and president of a club until September 2023. That was after he'd already applied for his agent license. FIFA found he knowingly didn't meet the conflict of interest rule when he applied. These cases show breaches have immediate consequences. Provisional license suspension.
Okay, so you get the license. What actually counts as football agent services? Just negotiating contracts.
It's broader than just contracts, according to FIFA's FAQs. Yes, negotiating deals for players or coaches is core, but it also includes helping with practical stuff. Housing, transport, admin, medicals, managing off-field things like PR, social media, even negotiating image rights deals or sponsorships for the client. It's quite encompassing.
And agreements must be written.
Absolutely. Representation agreements have to be in writing. An agent can only act for a client once that's signed.
How do agents get paid under these new rules?
The main principle. The fee must be paid exclusively by the client, the player, coach, or club who hired the agent. The client can't get a third party to pay it for them.
Is there an exception there?
Yes, one key exception. For players on low remuneration defined as earning less than USD 200,000 basic gross per year, the engaging entity.
The club signing them.
Exactly. That club may agree with the player coach to pay the agent's fee for that specific deal, but only according to the terms of the representation agreement between the agent and player coach.
How are fees calculated? Are there limits?
Caps?
Fees are usually based on the player's salary, if representing the player or buying club, or on the transfer fee, if representing the selling club. And yes, a major change is the introduction of maximum fee caps. These apply regardless of how many agents might be involved for one client. It's probably one of the most contentious parts of the FAR.
Agents also have to report things to FIFA now.
Yes, significant reporting duties. They must upload copies of all representation agreements, any other agreements for other services, plus any changes or terminations to the FIFA agent platform within 14 days.
If I'm a player, or maybe a club official, and someone claims they're a licensed agent, how do I check? FIFA has made that straightforward. There's a public FIFA football agent directory on their website. The regulations explicitly say this is the only official way to verify someone's license. Definitely check it before engaging anyone.
What kind of behavior is totally off limits for agents?
Big no-nos include offering or paying any undue advantage bribes, basically, whether cash or perks to officials or employees of clubs, FAs, leagues.
Like trying to influence a coach?
Exactly. Trying to bribe a coach to pick a player or a sporting director to sign someone, that's strictly forbidden. Violations can lead to sanctions, potentially losing their license entirely.
One last thing on agents. What about contracts signed before these new rules came into last October?
Okay, so agreements made before October 1st, 2023 remain valid until they naturally expire. However, they must comply with the FFAR from October 1st, 2023 onwards. So, for example, commission rates in those old contracts have to stick to the new PAPs if the payment trigger happens after that date. And crucially, the agents still needed to get their new FIFA license by October 1st, 2023, to keep providing any services, even under an old contract. FIFA's been clear. They won't help enforce commission claims above the caps if the trigger was after the FFA launch, even if the old contract said differently.
Wow, that's a huge shift in regulation for agents. Okay, let's change gears one last time to something critically important. Protecting children in football.
Yes, FIFA's really pushing this through the FIFA Guardians Toolkit initiative. It basically makes child safeguarding a mandatory minimum standard for all member associations, all stakeholders.
The core idea.
Football should be fun, safe, and respectful for every child involved. Simple as that.
The toolkit makes a distinction. Safeguarding versus child protection.
It does, and it's important. Safeguarding is proactive. It's about putting things in place to prevent harm, minimize risks before anything happens.
That's action.
That's reactive. It's the action taken after a concern or allegation of harm arises. Often involves reporting to external authorities, police, child protection services. You need both. Prevention and response.
And FIFA gives MAs a framework, the 5 steps.
Yes, a clear roadmap. Step 1, understand where kids are involved in football in your country. See what safeguards already exist. Step 2, define a clear safeguarding policy.
Okay.
Step 3, develop detailed procedures to actually implement that policy, things like safe recruitment, risk management. Step 4, roll out communication and education plans for everyone, staff, volunteers, kids, parents. Step 5, keep monitoring, evaluating, reviewing it all over time. It's a cycle.
Are specific roles needed within the MA?
Strongly recommended, yes. Appoint a child safeguarding officer or at least a dedicated focal point. They're key for driving it, training people, managing referrals, linking up with local experts or NGOs.
The toolkit also outlines the types of harm children might face.
It does. Physical abuse, emotional abuse, sexual abuse, and harassment. It specifically flags bullying, including cyberbullying, as emotional abuse. And it lists potential indicators, physical signs like unexplained pain, behavioral signs like low self-esteem, sudden changes in behavior, maybe stealing or begging. Part of the education is recognizing these potential signs.
What helps prevent abuse? What are the protective factors?
Things like having a really strong culture of respect and zero tolerance for abuse, clear, well-known policies, taking every incident seriously, good education and awareness, and just having caring, committed adults involved.
Risk management seems key throughout this.
Absolutely fundamental. MAs, clubs, they need to actively think about potential risks in all football settings: training, travel, changing rooms, supervision ratios, online stuff, and put procedures in place to manage those risks down.
Safe recruitment sounds like a huge part of prevention.
Probably one of the most critical steps. It's about stopping unsuitable people getting involved in the first place. Clear job descriptions, outlining safeguarding duties, asking behavioral questions in interviews, requiring signed declarations and adherence to codes of conduct, and police checks where possible, and legal checking offender databases if available. The toolkit admits checks aren't foolproof, but they're a vital layer.
Codes of conduct keep coming up. What's their main job?
They spell out expected behavior standards for everyone: staff, volunteers, parents, even the kids. They create accountability and show the organization is serious about these principles.
And the education piece needs to reach everyone.
Yes, but in different ways. General awareness for all adults involved recognizing concerns, knowing expected behaviors. More specialist training for those with key roles, like the safeguarding officer or recruiters, and critically, empowering children and parents, teaching them how to stay safe, how to report concerns, who to tell.
If someone does have a concern, what should they do? Is reporting compulsory?
The message is very clear. Everyone has a duty to prevent harm and report any concern, even seemingly minor poor practice. Why? Because it can escalate or be a sign of something bigger.
Okay.
Internal reporting systems are needed, yes, but they must link clearly to external statutory authorities, police, child protection agencies. Confidentiality is important internally, need to know, but information has to be shared with authorities when required for investigations.
Why this huge focus now? Is it really that necessary in football?
Sadly, yes. Research shows abuse happens in football. Risks can increase as players progress. We also know kids can harm other kids, bullying, peer-on-peer abuse. And the toolkit acknowledges speaking out is hard, especially against powerful figures. Ultimately, failing here doesn't just harm individuals, it damages the sport's integrity. FIFA offers resources like their Guardian's Safeguarding Essentials course to help build awareness.
Wow. Okay, this has been, well, a truly comprehensive deep dive into the scaffolding that holds global football together.
It really has. We've gone from the very top, FIFA's Congress and Council structure, down through that complex judicial and disciplinary system.
Ethics, disciplinary, the tribunal, CAS.
Exactly. Then into the maze of player transfer rules, TMS, ITC, protected periods, third-party influence bans. Then the whole new world for football agents, the strict licensing, the eligibility cases we looked at, the fee caps reporting.
Yeah.
And finally, this absolutely vital focus on child safeguarding through the FIFA Guardians work, understanding the framework, the proactive steps, the reporting duties.
It's just so clear that this massive evolving framework isn't just, bureaucracy for its own sake. It's the essential structure, trying to provide stability, ensure some fairness, protect vulnerable people, uphold integrity, and just give ways to resolve the endless disputes that crop up in a global sport like this.
Absolutely. And knowing it's not static, that it does adapt, whether it's to a crisis like the war in Ukraine or growing awareness around female players' rights or child safety that shows it's a living system trying to keep pace.
So wrapping up, thinking about this huge regulatory landscape off the pitch, governing everything from massive transfers and agent licenses right down to stadium behavior and a kid's safety at training, how does knowing all this change or maybe deepen your perspective on the game you actually watch on the pitch and maybe looking forward, what aspect of governing this truly global game do you think presents the biggest challenge today? Something to chew on after this deep dive.